Hi Stampers, this is Becky Gifford. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and creator of thesocialstamper.com. Thanks for watching my video today. I hope you really enjoy what you see and you're able to be inspired. I'm going to show you two techniques today. The first one I call well-worn stamping off, and the second one I call watercolor wipe. These are really simple, quick, and easy techniques that I think you'll really enjoy using on your projects. So let's get started. The first technique is well-worn stamping off. This technique is pretty cool because it gives your stamped images kind of a fun vintagey feel. So we'll need just a scratch piece of paper that you don't mind crinkling up, a piece of paper that you're actually going to use for your project, a stamp of course, and an ink pad. So you don't need a ton of supplies for this technique at all. We're going to take our scratch piece of paper and crinkle it up. You want a fair amount of wrinkles in your paper for this technique to work well. So just make sure you keep folding it and working it until you're happy with the number of wrinkles that you have. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to set that piece of paper aside. I'm going to open up my Marina Mist ink pad that I'm using for my project. And I'm going to ink my stamp, well, just like I would normally ink it for a project. That looks good. Instead of stamping directly on my project like I might normally, this time I'm going to stamp off on the wrinkly piece of paper, breathe on my stamp to re-moisten the ink, and then I'm going to stamp it on my project. And as you can see, it gives a really kind of cool worn image as opposed to just a straight stamped image. And I have a sample of both of those techniques side by side so you can see the difference. Here's one that I just stamped regularly, and then here's one where I use that well-worn technique. And you can see there's a subtle difference, but this one's really fun for some vintagey or just some kind of cooler projects. Okay, I'm going to set those aside. Also, by the way, this image is from my Postage Due stamp set. I love this stamp set. It's one of my newer ones and it's becoming one of my favorites. But the postage stamp images coordinate with our postage stamp punch that Stampin' Up! Makes. So I'm going to turn this postage stamp punch over and line it up, line the image up inside that, and then punch. And now I have a really cool little well-worn postage stamp that I can use as an embellishment on a project. I'll set that right there. Okay, for this second technique, that was quick, wasn't it? Moving on to the second one already. For my second technique, it's called the watercolor wipe technique. Now, as a mom, I constantly have baby wipes just laying around. And yes, I use them for other things besides stamping, clearly, but they come in handy on my stamping projects. So I'm going to use two baby wipes. This one is more just to catch drips in case I drip with my re-inkers that we're about to pull out. And then this second one, I just want to fold just in quarters or however to get a corner that I can use that I'm going to ink up. I'm going to use 3 of Stampin' Up's re-inking colors for this project: Wild Wasabi, Baja Breeze, and Marina Mist. Re-inkers can be used for a variety of techniques, including just normal watercoloring with a brush or one of our cool little brushes that you can fill with water. And they can also be used obviously to re-ink your stamp pads so you don't have to go buy brand new stamp pads every time they dry out. But today we're going to use them to drop on a baby wipe. So the first color I'm going to use is Baja Breeze. And I'm going to use this as my kind of primary color. So I'm going to do a few more drops of Baja Breeze than of the other colors. Then let me pull out my Marina Mist and do just a couple drops of that. And then my Wild Wasabi is just kind of an accent, so I'm just going to do a couple drops of my Wild Wasabi ink and set those aside. Now, if you're worried about getting ink on your fingers, then either wear gloves or just be really cautious. I am not worried about having ink on my fingers. I constantly do, so this will probably get ink on your fingers if you're not careful. Here's another stamp image from the same postage due stamp set. It's the bigger image. I'm using the F size clear block, which is one of our largest blocks, if not our largest block. And I'm gonna just be inking this corner flower down here because that's what I'm gonna be using for my project. You can ink the entire stamped image that you're gonna put on your project, and that's great too if you're not just using this technique for an accent piece. But keep in mind that it's not gonna show up very well on just a simple outlined stamp image. You want something that's a little bit more substantial. It doesn't have to be a solid image, but just not just a skinny outline of a shape or an animal or something like that. So we're gonna take our baby wipe that we've inked and just dab it on the part of the image or the whole image that we're wanting to use this technique for. You can't mess it up by dabbing it too much if the colors are pretty similar. If you've got really vastly different colors like a yellow and an orange or something like that, or a yellow and a red, this technique might not work as well because it might give a muddy look if you go over it too many times. But you can experiment and play around and see what just works well for you. I'm gonna set that inked part aside. Again, I'm gonna breathe on my stamp just to re-moisten it. And then we're gonna stamp it directly down onto our project. And there you can see it gives kind of a cool, kind of a cool variation in color of your stamped image. It's not just one solid color. It's got a little bit of a watercolor effect, which is why I call this the watercolor wipe technique. I think it's fun and simple to use on your projects. So those are our two techniques. Also with our watercolor wipe, if we don't want to ink a stamped image, we can ink a whole piece of paper using this technique and just dab this ink around, and it's gonna give kind of some fun variation to the color on our paper and kind of a watercolor technique or look. And you can see how we can use that. Now, I used all three of these techniques on a card I made for my husband for our anniversary. It's our 6th wedding anniversary. So coming up on July 22nd. So I've made this card for him. Here you can see we've used the well-worn stamping off technique on the postage stamp. I used the watercolor wipe technique on the whole piece of paper and then cut it in this pretty fishtail ribbon for the sentiment. And then I used the watercolor wipe technique again on the stamped image down here that I just cut out and then stuck right down on my project as an accent piece. You can see that they work really well together, but if you wanted to use them separately on a project, they'll look equally as fantastic. I hope you really enjoy using these techniques and playing around and seeing what works best for you. Definitely visit my website at thesocialstamper.com to get more inspiration and tips and project ideas.